Welcome to the Buildings and Cooling Pavilion at COP30. My name is Joscha Rosenbusch. I'm working for GIZ in the Partnership for Energy Efficiency in Buildings. And I will be moderating this session today. The session is recorded and put online. And we have some people in the audience. It's very hot here in Belém. So please bear with us who are on the stage today. So first of all, I would like to introduce the title, which is Decarbonising Buildings, a multi-stakeholder approach for financing the transition. And this side event to the COP has been put together by many institutions that have joined forces. It has been led by the UNEP Finance Initiative and other institutions like ING, Guidehouse, European Energy Efficiency Finance Coalition, Global Green Growth Institute, and others. So today we want to talk about banks and policy and explore how multi-stakeholder approaches need to accelerate the transition to low carbon and climate resilient buildings. And we want to highlight the pivotal role that financing institutions and policy can make in driving this transition. We will kick off with two keynote interventions and then have two panels for discussion. So I would like to invite Lutz Morgenstern from the German Ministry for the Environment to the stage to give some opening remarks. Lutz, the floor is yours.
Okay, Joscha, thank you very much. I'm really pleased to be here. Since we are not, we're a good number of people, but we can still talk to each other. So I do not want to be too formal and too long, and I really will do a short opening remark. But I would be interested first to know who of you has a finance background, or who is from the finance sector? Okay, here. and so probably you are more from the building sector then, I assume. And yeah. And this is great that we bring these backgrounds together here. And this is one of the goals that we actually have, and this is why we support the work of the Global Alliance for Building and Construction, because we think that is really important to connect the debates and get progress on financing for buildings. Some numbers, but probably you know them better, or maybe you have different numbers. So this is why I'm using them, just to check them. But according to the UNEP and Global ABC, the building sector needs about 2.7 trillion US dollars to be on a reference pathway by 2030 to minus 40% reduction. And that's really a tremendous amount of money, and at the moment, to be honest, even with all the projects that we are supporting by the German government with our cooperation, we are only scratching the surface. But nonetheless, we are really proud of the projects that we support, and one of the projects I would like to highlight specifically, that's the Program for Energy Efficiency in Buildings, PEEP, and Joscha, of course, is one of our trusted and excellent partners in that project. I'm always looking for specific examples that tell the story of these projects. And one story that I found interesting, and this is why we selected that story, is that of the support in Tunisia, where, as you know, the Program for Energy Efficiency in Buildings, PEEP, it's a cooperation between AFD from France and GIZ from Germany, so supported by both countries. And it combines financial and technical support. And in Tunisia, the support, there was specific support for the renovation of two hospitals, and that's really a blueprint for a broader transformation in Tunisia now for the country's entire healthcare infrastructure. The support has catalyzed finance from nearly 160 million in AFD loans for the renovation, and the hospitals will exceed energy regulations for hospital buildings by 20%. So they will be 20% more effective than the standard, and that will save approximately 200,000 tons of CO2 equivalents over 25 years, compared with the baseline scenario. It's only one example, but it's a really important example because it combines in the public infrastructure the needs of people in these countries with the CO2 reduction, so with the climate efforts. And therefore, we are really happy with the ongoing work. I also wanted to mention a study that we have supported via the Buildings Breakthrough and the Global ABC. It's called the Near Zero Energy and Resilient Building Finance Study that has examined more than 80 international financing facilities. And the study highlights three main barriers to finance sustainable buildings. First, the fragmented small-scale funding. Second, the inconsistent standards and data. And third, the weak links between policy and finance. And the strategy that is outlined in this study, how to improve that, is first to work to harmonize standards, to strengthen local capacity to bundle projects, to deploy de-risking instruments to attract private investment, and to ensure clear building codes and energy standards to provide long-term signals for investors. And all above, governance, financial institutions and private sector must unite to align policies and investments driving the systemic change needed in the sector. So the Global ABC and its Finance Hub, led by PEEP, plays a crucial role in that. And now I will stop, and I'm really looking forward to the exchange with you, and I hope that it will be an interactive exchange and not too formal, so that we can actually really take lessons back together. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Lutz, for test. It's on, yeah? Okay, thanks. So thank you, Lutz, for these opening remarks. We have a second keynote speaker, Cristina Lobillo-Borreo from the European Commission, Director for Energy Security and International Relations. The floor is yours, please.
Thank you very much, Josh and Lutz, and a warm welcome to all of you. It's my pleasure to be here today in this event, because it focuses on one of the most important priorities for the European Union. I would like to start by reminding you some key features of the building sector. As you know, only 1% of the buildings in the world are properly renovated. Buildings are essential in the European Union. You know, they account for 30% of the final energy consumption and 26% of greenhouse gas emission. So that's the reason why, if we want to achieve our global target to triple renewable and doubling energy efficiency by 2030, we need to act decisively in this sector. The President of the Commission, Ursula von der Leyen, was here in Belém 2 days ago, and she reiterated our strong commitment to advance toward decarbonization by 2050. And she also mentioned how important and how essential it is to meet this global target, and also mentioned that this is the path that the European Union has decided. He said we stay the course despite what's happening in the world. So this is a message that we want to make very, very clear here in Belém in the COP. So if we want to act decisively in this sector, in the European Commission, we have identified the different, we say, barriers. Some of them are of regulatory nature, so we really want to go through them, maybe to go for simplification when needed. But we have identified the most important barrier, the financing. So Lutz, you started by, and you, Josh, are mentioning that. You all know the figure that the International Energy Agency published, so that we have a gap of from 400 to 500 billion dollars worldwide. So we really need to work together to try to close this gap. And for that, we do believe that we need public support, but we need to be able to attract the private investment. And this is a work that we had to do from the administrations, but we need also to enhance all these multi-stakeholders approaches. So here I would like to mention that the European Energy Efficiency Financing Coalition is one of the initiatives that we really focus on. We are interested on that. Recently, one of our colleagues attended the last meeting that took place, I think 1 month ago. And we really believe that it's an effort that maybe it could take time, but we really want to involve the 27 member states, and we want to involve actively the 70 financial institutions and 40 industry members, with the purpose to mobilize and to be able to incorporate more investment in this sector. We think that the joint action of governments, financial institutions, and the industry, this coalition has what we call a genuine three-party architecture, and we intend to use this unique set that we have supported in the Commission to implement concrete commitments in energy efficiency. So we do believe in this kind of multi-stakeholder approach, because the challenge is so big that it's impossible to tackle from one angle only. So we do believe that this is the path to have ahead of us. Maybe just to conclude, because I think now you have the panel and will be important opinion to discuss. So I would like maybe to highlight again that the European Union is fully committed to our global target. Again, tripling renewable, doubling energy efficiency. Tomorrow we'll have a ministerial in the European Union Pavilion with more than 50 ministers from the world participating in this event. And in order to doubling energy efficiency, we need to act for once and very decisively on the building sector. So again, let's work together to try to close the gap of financing, and let's work together to make the places where we live, we learn, the places that are really sustainable and can be an example also for the rest of the world. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Christina. So before proceeding with the program, I would like to invite Lutz, Christina, and the 4 panelists of the first panel back on stage for a quick family photo, because I know Christina has to leave. So we have this captured, and then the panelists can just stay, and we start with the discussion. So Katja, Anne-Sophie, Guillaume, and Matt, you're there? Yes. Okay, thank you. Thanks again.
See you soon.
So now I'm happy to have the first panelists on stage. Yeah, please take your water, that's important. So I will quickly introduce the first panelists, and then we kick off the discussion. So we have on stage Katja Eisbrenner from Guidehouse, Director for Communities, Energy and Infrastructure. Anne-Sophie Castellao from ENG Group, Director or Global Head of Sustainability. Guillaume Lorenz from the Sustainable Finance Observatory, Head of Bankable Sustainable Solutions, and Matt Black from the World Green Building Council, Climate Action Manager. So it's very nice to have you here joining this first panel, in which we will discuss how to build coalitions for action between different stakeholders. We know that decarbonizing the residential real estate sector is ultimately a multi-stakeholder problem or challenge, and benefits spread across a big and broad system of actors. Katja, from Guidehouse, we will start with you with one question that relates to a recent white paper that you have published, in which you state clearly that the real estate sector is off track when it comes to achieving its climate goals. So could you maybe share what are we lacking? Where are the blind spots that we are currently having in tackling the financing challenge?
Thank you. Thank you very much, Joshua, for this. Yeah, actually, this is a white paper that we did together with ING. So Sophie and I will also change on the different perspectives. The perspectives that I would like to take is that what we found is that the real estate sector is still seen as a technical problem, or that the biggest problem is actually technical. But when we did more of the research, we identified that it's actually more about a governance and coordination, because you really need a lot of players in this whole thing, starting from the government, but also until the house owner, and often they're not communicating together at the same time. So this is really a core element. And finance is a topic, and we will hear about that a bit more, but it's also sometimes not a lack of availability, but a lack of accessibility and of implementation of that. We also found in this that one of the blind spots is accountability. So really nobody owns the whole journey of the decarbonization, because it's always at different levels, and that also maybe is slightly different for individual homeowners and landlords. What we really need is a shift from consultation to collaboration and to co-creation. I think that's the three things that we need, and everybody needs to be involved in the design and really take ownership, and not leave that in the end, it didn't work out because it wasn't my problem. So with all these different fragmented incentives that we find also by the different actors, it's not working out yet. Even in the Netherlands, it hasn't, where they're very progressive, it's still a misalignment. And that's really slowing the process, and we need to get going. So I'm happy to hear also from the financiers and that perspective. So we really need integration into these different measures, and it's very specific also, not for one building type, but by the different technology types in the building. But we also need to consider the elements outside of the building, the whole electricity infrastructure, the whole energy system that also needs to play a role in this. And maybe I stop here for this question.
Yeah, thanks, Katja. I hope this is working. Yeah. A quick follow-up question. I think you highlighted this ecosystem approach, in your white paper. Could you elaborate why it's important when implementing any kinds of intervention in this sector to leverage and accelerate the transition and implementation in the practice?
Yeah, actually, so this ecosystem approach is what we call that. It's not a multi-stakeholder, but also multi-dimensional, so that we really need to bring the different players at that different level together, and that they are taking the responsibility for it. And what we have seen in this specifically is also that in that one example that somebody took the accountability, and that we also not only have measures like implementing the finance, but also that people feel accountable for what they have set. And one of the solutions that we see here is like that we need more a platform approach, and we have seen that in certain countries, but we need to actually bring that together, more from the finance, the policy, and the technology and implementation side. And I want to mention here that this is needed for the building sector, we believe, but also this is happening on other sectors. And as we usually all are in our own little bubbles, I want to mention a project that's actually supported by the German government through the International Climate Initiative, where it's looking at industry decarbonization, where also driven by the banks, and there it's multilateral development banks, they merged because also in Turkey, there's the example to a Turkey-specific industry decarbonization platform where exactly all these players are brought together. Here the need is because if you do a CCUS plant, you have a lot of money, and no bank wants to take the risk and finance it alone. But the approach, if that's working for industry decarbonization, it could also be taken for the buildings. And maybe I'll stop here.
Yeah, thanks. Thank you so much, Katja. So let's turn to the finance institution. ING is a global financial institution, financial innovation, and active in joining coalitions and local platforms. So, Ann-Sophie, let's start with your core business. How is ING integrating innovative financing instruments into your operations and to decarbonize your mortgage portfolio? And what are the greatest challenges that you are tackling there? And what can you share to this group?
Thank you. Indeed, ING is a very large mortgage bank. We have a book of something like 300 billion mortgages over several European markets, mostly Netherlands, Germany, Belgium, Spain, Poland, plus a few more, but those are the main ones. Indeed, we try to make sure that we support our clients in that journey, be it our corporate clients, but also our private individual clients. And we have made a lot of research so as to understand why they are taking action or why they don't take action and where it's coming from. So when it comes to renovation, they take action mostly because they see a financial benefit. They don't take action because they want your house to be more sustainable or more green. And that comes just after. But that's really if they see financial benefit of going for it. So that's the first point. The second point is that we have tried as much as we can to make that renovation journey easy for our clients. Because that's complicated. Renovation is really a matter of looking at very many different parts. So we've created platforms, one in the Netherlands, now one in Belgium, where clients can find everything and sort of one-stop shop, for renovation, from getting advice to finding a financing, understanding the incentives that are available, and finding the parties who are going to be able to support you in renovating your home. So that's the idea, already making the life of our clients easier. And we also look at what kind of incentive we can give them so as to go for it, trying to help on the business case, I would say, as we understand this is a rationale for them to act. And for instance, what we have launched in the Netherlands is that the pricing is linked to the energy efficiency label that clients get for when they buy a new home, or even when they renovate a home, and they move from one label to one better label, they can get a discount in terms of pricing. So we lower the price basically when they make that effort to renovate, so that they can have a bit of money on the side so as to also finance that renovation journey. And that sort of works. That's something their customers are sensitive to, and that seems to get traction. But nevertheless, we must say that we have to recognize that it's not enough to move the needle, frankly. So far, what we see when we monitor year after year the carbon intensity of our mortgage book, it's mostly moving thanks to the greening the grid from the government side. The really actions on retrofitting the home are quite limited. And for that, we see several explanations to that challenge. First, the demand is not that big. We really lack demand, and we need to ensure that, in particular, the regulation side of things is stable, because many of our customers are a bit lost. The incentive that they can get change from one year to another, so that's easy to be a bit destabilized, as I say sometimes, with what can I benefit from. And as those projects, they take time, it can really change the entire project. So secondly, it remains expensive, and sometimes that's more than up to 100K that you need to dedicate to renovating a home that is a bit old. So that's really impactful for some private individual. They cannot afford going for it. Third thing is that the capacity of the renovation sector, I mean the builders, the one who are going to make it happen, construction company, they are not enough. We don't have sufficient resources in the various markets in which we are active. That limits the renovation effort. Third thing is that the data that as a bank we can get is not good enough. In many cases, we still struggle to get the energy label of the home we finance, so as to properly track the progress. That's insufficient. And finally, a specific issue related to houses that are in the hands of housing association. you have a very complex decision-making process, you need majority rules and so on, so that limits also taking action.
Just thank you, Anne-Sophie. Very interesting. I think it relates a lot to the experience that we have at PEEP, also when it comes to interacting with the final user of the resources and clients. I mean, you already elaborated that you have joined quite some coalitions, multi-stakeholder coalitions, and have played an active part. So I'm wondering if you could maybe highlight again what have been the major coalitions that you have been participating in, and what do you think are the framework conditions that make these approaches replicable in other, let's say, setups in other countries, so we can learn from the experience and maybe take them to other places to replicate them.
Of course, happy so. So indeed, we are of course a bank, so we finance, and we are a systematically important bank, so we finance a lot, but we also see a role for ourselves to convene parties around how to move forward together. So we are part of many forums, networks, working groups, and that's with our peers, with governments, with EU bodies, and we really try to work with them. So one key one we've been a long time member of is the EU Energy Efficiency Financing Forums. First of all, it was a working group. Now that's a sub-coalition, and that's really something that can move things forward. But we are also member of many banking association working groups where we collaborate, of course, with our peers, and more we address topics related to that topic of real estate, in particular working together on data and what kind of data we need and how we can get them without making the life of our customer too complicated. We are also a member of building sector initiative, in particular of many of the national green building councils. And we are funding member of the ones in the Netherlands, and now we are launching the ones in Belgium. So that's great, but to some extent that's too much. There are too many of those forums, and that at some point that becomes a bit distracting, and you cannot spend your time contributing to each and every one. So now what we are trying to really call for is a convergence and a sort of I would say consolidation of those initiatives, so as to ensure we gain efficiency and we are more effective in the way we contribute to all together, bringing that systemic change that particular sector needs to achieve.
I think quite interesting observations on the proliferation of fora that are then oftentimes hard to follow. I think that's a good takeaway for those who are engaged in these setting up and steering these fora. Yeah? All right, Matt, the green building councils have already been mentioned by Anne-Sophie. So you're with the World Green Building Council, which is the global association basically of national green building councils. And the World Green Building Council has a network model that emphasizes multi-stakeholder approaches and deep collaboration across the entire value chain of the building. Could you tell us more about the World Green Building Council and the GBC networks and how they engage with financial institutions and investors?
Yeah, excellent. Thank you, Joshua. And great to hear, Anne-Sophie, that you're supporting so many GBCs. But yeah, as Joshua said, I'm from the World Green Building Council, and we are essentially the parent organization for 85 now green building councils around the world. So many of you in the audience will have a local green building council in your country. And collectively, those 85 green building councils represent over 53,000 businesses involved in the built environment sector. So just to give a bit of an indication there of the depth of the network. And you know, that network is more the built environment stakeholders who are engaged in the construction of buildings or the management, engineers, etc. But that also includes finance and investment stakeholders as well. And I think, as we heard sort of from our keynotes and from Katja, you know, it's very, very clear. Most of us know the technical solutions. This COP is all about action, and mobilizing sustainable finance at a greater scale is one of the key levers to achieve more action in the short amount of time. And a key way of doing that, as Katja touched on, is through collaboration. So I think the things I'm going to touch on really from us at World GBC and from the Green Building Councils is about us as organizations being a bit of a convener and an interlocker between finance and investor stakeholders and those who are trying to implement and deliver sustainable buildings. So in terms of that, as I said, it's sort of about bridging knowledge gaps between the finance and built environment. It's about developing and promoting investment frameworks that align sustainability targets with financial performance. And it's about advocating for smarter policies and incentives to direct that capital into appropriate and impactful actions. I think the most relevant stuff that we're doing at the moment is often around taxonomy, so the EU taxonomy. There's been an awful lot of work at the European regional network level for us. So all of the European Green Building Councils have been working over the last few years to interpret what does the EU Green Taxonomy mean, not only for them as an organization, but obviously for their members. You know, how are they going to implement this taxonomy, align to that taxonomy, and also work on alignment between, you know, existing other frameworks and standards, particularly green building rating tools that people often use to you know, not judge how green a building is, but, you know, work towards implementing those sustainability measures. So there's been a lot of work at the European level, and then also now, just a few months ago, our Asia Pacific network of green building councils also worked on a position paper again around the alignment of the rating tools in Asia Pacific against the ASEAN taxonomy. So hopefully that's like a really clear example of trying to be that go-between between financial institutions and some of these frameworks that are being brought out, hoping to mobilize more finance, and green building councils and other sort of organizations such as those having to interpret that and then take it down to the businesses who are looking to implement that. Our work goes obviously quite beyond that. There's multiple different work streams, but I'll just touch on another one in terms of, you know, we've heard already that, and we've discussed how, you know, mobilizing finance, sustainable finance, that's the massive lever that we need to do in order to accelerate action. But you need to know where that money is going to go and what's the most effective actions or policies that they can support. So one of the other things that World GBC and again the local green building councils have been engaged in all across the world is developing sector-specific, so built environment sector-specific decarbonisation and now resilience roadmaps to try and give that big picture indication of what different stakeholders should be doing to advance that action, whether that's sort of direct implementation of solutions or indeed whether it's the type of policies that we need to see that will advance that as well. So I'll stop there. I think that's a bit of an overview.
Thank you. Very good. I mean, we at PEP also have quite some engagements with the local green building councils in many of the countries that we are operating. And also your work on the taxonomy also resonates with what we are doing. All right, I'm happy that we can bring another example of a successful platform approach where multiple stakeholders work together to mobilize finance. So we are turning to Guillaume from the Sustainable Finance Observatory. And Guillaume, I would like to ask you to elaborate a bit on the FI Reno Plus platform that you have developed in France, and tell us about the objectives to co-design financial innovation and solutions, and maybe share with us what are the approaches that have proven to be the most effective to coordinate the stakeholders and innovate in finance for green buildings.
Great. Good afternoon. Thank you. Would like first to thank Global ABC for the invitation, and you, fantastic to share this very important moment with you. So very happy for that. What I would like to say, so first, so I'm Guillaume Lorenz. I'm a former private banker, and as you said, I work for SFO, Sustainable Finance Observatory. We are a think tank really dedicated on the way to unlock the private capital for transition. And what I would like to do now is to share the experience of Plus, and this experience is clearly a way we turn and the public-private dialogue in clearly deployable financial solution. So the clear takeaway is when you are pairing financial engineering with the governance. When I'm talking about governance, I'm talking about the multi-stakeholder approach, I mean inclusive one. When you really combine the two, you are able to really unlock up to 6 billion a year in terms of private and additional clearly funding. So that's really key. So the question, the question is, okay, what have we done? And what we've done is we have gathered more than 150 participants. For sure, public institutions, you see government, ministries, you get regulators, civil society. But what is key, we have engaged 6 largest banks of the country. And it's clearly, okay. Yeah. No. Yes. I suppose. Okay. Thanks for. Okay. Now it works. Okay. Thanks. So the idea with this as 150 participants, we are really targeted to action. So we really go beyond recommendation. We provide clearly turnkey solutions. So I would like to share with you 2 key examples. One is really based on the French really area, which illustrate the way we can really adapt financial engineering to a specific country. And one for sure, another example that you can keep with you and to probably replicate. So the first one is based in France. France is really specific because we've got a really strong support in terms of subsidy dedicated to vulnerable really households. That's fantastic, but there is a key problem. Problem that there are serious delays. So there are no renovation in place. So what we are doing is for the solution with the banks. The banks will play their role, and what they do, they really promote an advance loan grant. What does it mean? In that they provide the cash to really remove the upfront barrier. Show that. I don't think it works well. Probably much better now. Okay, thanks. So what they do, so they ensure with a secured contract that the renovation can start, and within a secured transaction. And in terms of the impact, that's very important because for the banks, there is really a de-risk, so the lender is de-risked, and clearly we accelerate the demand. So it's, we clearly remove the upfront cost barrier. The second one, so is the example you can keep with you and probably replicate. As Clemmy mentioned before, there is a problem. We cannot really measure the actual impact. And what we need is clearly a tangible, verifiable certification. And we can do that, and really with the robust the process, and very important in terms of impact, because when you really put in place deep renovation, you create value for the owners. Just to give you an example about
Our
the
innovation
value,
and
it's
education.
up to 30%. So okay, almost as tough as the renovation. So now we will do as what we've done with renovation. Okay, we can make it. So, okay, what about the impacts? The impacts are clear. The value in France, when you are talking about deep renovation, it's up to 30%, which means that my colleagues are very kind. I will make it again. So, and in terms of energy bill, deep renovation, you divide it by 6, which is really comfortable. And for the banks, clearly you can classify your loan as a green one because it's EU line, and because in terms of figures, we reach roughly 17% in terms of primary energy savings. And what does it mean? That we clearly qualify it and you get access at a lower cost of capital, which is key for the banks. So it clearly illustrates the way we reduce the credit risk, which is really interesting for the banks. So that's it for 2 examples you can keep with you. And again, one really, we adapt the financial engineering depending on the context. Another one, which will not be a plug and play, but clearly provide solid background to really replicate.
Many thanks, Guillaume. Very interesting, the experience that you're sharing from France. And apologies, we had to reconnect the microphones here for the short break. I have a follow-up question, and it goes to the replication potential. Yeah. So if you think of the key governance aspects and features, and also the success factors of the 2 examples that you have described, which are the key ones that you would pick out that would allow a replication in different setups?
Yeah, the Korean is really a package. So clearly, again, the governance is the inclusive, really multi-stakeholder. We really want to do that and to create some kind of pool of bank really having a strong voice and bring credibility when they talk to governments. That's the first thing. The second one is clearly it's good to have a convener which really help the panel to work together, but it has really to be really keen and, will not say top-notch, but solid technical background and skill in terms of financial schemes. And there is also a key point, which is an agile really setup. The way we do that is to ensure that we've got data, so we can monitor and so on. We've got the legal process. But with the steering group, clearly, finally, what we obtain, I mean, is really well known in a private sector, which is called the term sheet. The term sheet is ensures that we can put in place a transaction. So just to summarize, for sure, we have got a strategic use of the public funding to really leverage the capital. So keen to share after this session, the basic things and I would say a principle for action.
Thank you, Guillaume. So you touched upon some of the features. I will ask the same question to all other 3 panelists as a closing wrap-up round. Yeah. We are good in time, so you don't need to rush. Take your time. But the question is, maybe start with you, Katja. You were nodding on many points that Guillaume just mentioned. So from your point of view, what are the key conditions or the key governance aspects that need to be put in place in order to run such a multi-stakeholder platform that mobilizes innovative finance?
Yeah, thanks a lot. And I agree to all of what you said. So I'd like to bring the higher level. Where? Here. Okay, Anita. Okay. Now, I want to bring it up to the higher level. We also need leadership by the European Commission at what we heard today. So multi-stakeholder doesn't stop maybe at the city level or local municipalities. It goes up to all the different governments, but also to the leadership then of that higher governance. So even the COP here is relevant for that, and that we are still talking about buildings and that we're showing the ASBA aspect, and that also at the EU level there is trusted regulation will also stay in place for a while, and often, at least on the government level, that can change with the change of governments and the different supporting elements. So I think that's one of the conditions we haven't really that are also very important in this whole multi-stakeholder context. And then said, let's not technologies, but also and sorry, what am I? Not only on the technology side, but really looking at the governance and coordination, and let's co-create and collaborate, and that can be costly, at least it looks like maybe costly from the outset to bring everybody together, but in the end, if then the best plans are not implemented, it doesn't help. So you really need to maybe look at that upfront investment, bringing all the stakeholders together, making sure that they're all trusting the system is of key importance, and really great to hear that you have these examples. And we were also a bit surprised about that outcome in the research that we did across Europe in that paper that's also available online, so feel free to read it. There's a lot of technical data also in it, although we are saying technology is not the thing, there's a lot of technical details also there. Maybe I stop here.
Yeah, thank you. Anne-Sophie, maybe you have additional points that you can add to this list already?
Yeah, I mean, we've talked about the consistency of messaging from governments. This is a key one for me. And that's true that in the EU, for instance, the member states have to embed the EPBD in their roadmap. They need to set national building renovation plans, and the role of homeowners will have to be
climatique qu'il y a, qui est une évidence. On la voit être accompagné au niveau de la communication pour atteindre les différentes niches.
Test.
Vous évoquez l'action, l'engagement du gouvernement sur la question des peuples autochtones. J'ai eu le privilège d'être là lorsque première loi sur les peuples autochtones, organisée dans la Likwala, juste la construction de ce centre, de ce joyau qui malheureusement...
Test.
Hello?
ICC, pavilhão 40, PVC C82. Eu vi que é a mesma frequência que a gente.
Oh.
Ainda bem que você manja. Tá
governments have to look at, it's the decarbonization of the energy produced in each and every country. So, and that has a big impact. Next to indeed having houses insulated, the use of energy is a big contributor to CO2 emission. So where is it coming from is absolutely key. And depending on the countries, it's completely different type of situations.
Yeah, thanks. I think echo the words of what everyone said in terms of collaboration. I think the one thing that, for my sort of wrap-up thoughts is, you know, to also think of that not just from the top down, but also from the bottom up. You know, you can't always impose change agendas without local ownership to ensure that, you know, these businesses that are trying to access the finance, these people who are going around building the buildings or retrofitting the buildings, etc., that they also have some ownership and they feel that they've been engaged in the process to some degree. So yeah, really emphasize that importance in terms of co-creating guidance, strategies, roadmaps, frameworks, whatever type of thing that we're talking about in terms of that, trying to do that convening and to do that engagement is really important, and connect, you know, up and down the value chain, because obviously we want to see more ambitious policies from all levels of government, local, national, regional, national, all the way up to the EU, and we want to see that the finance being mobilized, but also being able to have those businesses able to understand that and access that and be able to implement that. So I think that's my wrap-up.
Thank you so much, Matt. Before closing this panel, I just want to ask whether there's a question from the audience. Yes, please. Sorry.
Thank you. What country would you say is leading the climate resilient movement in terms of architecture?
I think it's unfair to pick one. Everyone does it differently, you know, and it's different for every region. When you're thinking about resilience for Europe, it's all about retrofitting existing buildings. You know, the stat that everyone says, you know, 80% of the buildings that exist in 50 years in Europe they're already there. You know, so yes, they need to build decarbonized, resilient new buildings, but a lot of it is about transitioning the existing building stock. Elsewhere in the world, in Latin America, Asia Pacific, Africa, here is where resilience is maybe more explicit, more felt in the immediate term. And everyone approaches that in a different way, whether it's through water efficiency, energy efficiency, material efficiency in terms of reducing embodied carbon. So yeah, I think hard to pick one. So I've absolutely skirted around that and not given an answer, but yeah.
Okay, thanks, Matt. Very diplomatic answer. Well, with this, I close the first panel. Many thanks. Maybe a round of applause for this very interesting discussion. And with this, I would like to invite the second panel to join me on stage.
Just the two of us?
Yeah, no, there are more. Hi.
Hi.
Huh? No, we had three. It's okay. All are there. Hi. So, quick. Yeah, shall we do a group before starting? Let's have a quick group picture. Okay, so let me quickly introduce the next panel. So we have from the first Abu Dhabi Bank, FAB, Sajil Bashir, EVP and Chief Sustainability Officer. From AXA, Marika Rütter, Head of Sustainability Strategy. and from the GGGI, Global Green Growth Institute, Ferrucci Santetti, that's correct, yeah? Ferruccini? Regional Director, sorry for this. So in this second panel, we want to explore your experiences that you have as financing instruments to mobilize resources for green buildings, incentive and also stakeholder cooperation examples that you have been exposed to as in the first panel we did. So Sajil, we start with you. First Abu Dhabi Bank has been on the forefront of developing innovative financing in the region, using its financial influence to accelerate the transition to greener buildings and more sustainable cities. Could you tell us how First Abu Dhabi Bank is leveraging its sustainable finance framework for both commercial and residential clients in greening their buildings? And I apologize, we only have one mic left, so we need to change quickly. Yeah?
Musical chair. So yeah, first of all, thank you very much for hosting this panel. So First Abu Dhabi Bank is a regional leader, and our journey on sustainability started a long time ago. But really, when we discussed the greening aspect of the building part, we really accelerated that journey back in 2017 when we issued our first green bond, which was the first by a bank in Middle East and the North African region. Since then, we have taken a lot of steps to say how can we support our clients and can support the infrastructure and greening from that perspective. And a key aspect of that was to develop our sustainable finance framework, which very clearly aligns that what do we count as green, what is seen as sustainable, and especially also on the category on the building aspect. Following up from the last panel, in the Middle East, what we are seeing is much more development of new buildings and not that much of retrofitting as we have seen other places. And of course, one of the challenges we have is the cooling aspect, right? Because we have very, very high temperatures, so we need cooling, which could be helpful in this place as well. But of course, that is something that is in a lot of focus, which is of course very, very energy incentive as well, right? So we need to figure out a good way to deal with that. And that's where we work very closely with a lot of our different stakeholders to say that how do we find solutions that can help create energy efficient buildings, but at the same time energy efficient cooling systems. And so all the new developments that is being done can be from a green building perspective. And when we look at from a FAB perspective, around a third of the sustainable financing we have done has been towards green buildings. And when we look into, trying to put that in context, so far of green buildings, we've done 900,000 square meters of green building financing. And just as a context, that equals 3 times the world's largest buildings, just to put that in context. And we continue doing that, and now we are starting to see, after COP28, a lot of focus coming into the energy efficiency aspect as well. And that's where we are trying to leverage a similar way that you're seeing in Europe, a lot of focus around retrofitting, to say that the buildings that are 5-10 years old, how can we retrofit those, while at the same time supporting the building of energy efficiency for the new ones.
Very interesting. So building on that and going back to the title of today's side event, which is on partnerships, right? Could you tell us a little about the role that partnerships between private sector and also governments play in your region in particular? Yeah. And maybe share some examples that you have with successfully tackling this?
Yeah, so I think for us, generally in the region, we're seeing a lot of private-public partnerships are critical to establish those partnerships. So a good example of that is that we have done a pilot with the Ministry of Energy and Infrastructure, where we have said, okay, we and a couple of developers go together with the ministry itself to say, let's try to create a pilot where we identify different buildings to say that how can we create incentives from a financial institution perspective for these buildings to go and become more green, so energy efficiency basically, right? So retrofitting of those buildings, so we bring in the partners like Siemens and so on, we build in developers, we build in the financial institution to say how can we all work together to provide some kind of incentives. And the aim is that once that project is done, it gets the certification by the ministry to being a green building, so it can get involved into our sustainable finance ambitions and targets. So those are some of the examples how we are trying to achieve that as well. But also, I think it's also important for us that we are bringing the public sector into how can we bring them into our discussion with our clients. So typically, discussion in the private sector is already quite strong. That's at least what we see in the region. So what we are doing now is to say, okay, how do we bring some of the challenges that the private sectors are seeing, that developers are seeing right now on the policy side and so on, and bring that as a facilitator to the ministry itself. So those are some of the discussions that we are leveraging on specifically. Last year we hosted our real estate summit, sectorial summit, where we brought together developers, we brought together policymakers, we brought together suppliers to the development sector to say that how can we work together to solve the challenges of energy efficiency in buildings, greening the buildings together, bringing everyone into the same room as well. To establish some partnership on that. And already from that perspective, we saw more than 5 to 10 agreements being signed within the 3 months of this kind of discussions to bringing all the different stakeholders in the same room to address some of those challenges.
Yeah, super interesting examples. We know that to meet this financing gap that the keynote speakers at their opening have mentioned, there's a need for innovation, innovation in finance. So how do you drive innovation in finance? And maybe you can share some replicable examples that we can take home.
Yeah. So for us, what we have done is, we had an ambition we want to digitalize our mortgage journey, right? And I think this is a direction that most of the banks works towards as well. So how can we make the process as smooth as possible for our clients? How can we make it as simple for our clients as possible? What we have done over the past 3 years is to say every time we're looking into any customer journey, also on the mortgage side, how do we start by embedding ESG into this? So as soon as when we are trying to define that journey, we try to look into ESG specifically from upfront, which means that specifically for clients, when they are trying to buy a house, if they're considering to retrofit, we look at upfront to say how can we add ESG into this discussion. As an example, can you get solar panels of this house specifically? What impact will this create? What will this mean? So instead of doing these discussions on the sideline, we try to integrate this into all the discussions we have. And now when we're moving into the next step of these customer journeys to say how do we bring in AI into this part as well? Right, so if you're buying a house, what role can AI play into this? How can you get all this information? How can we simplify the process even again? That's also a place where we are trying to bring in ESG upfront. To say what does this mean from a sustainability perspective? So if you buy this house, how will this impact your ESG profile as an individual client of the bank? And we are starting to do this from a commercial real estate perspective. So from commercial perspective as first point, that if you're building this commercial project, how will this impact your profile with the bank from an ESG perspective? So we try to, from that perspective, also build some incentives to our clients that if you do get a better ESG rating with us, it's also going to have a positive impact from your pricing perspective with the bank.
Thank you. Thanks, Sajil. So going over to the next panelist, Marika. It's clear that you need financial frameworks, but also proper risk-sharing mechanisms in place in order to channel the capital and investments into the greening of the building sector. So could you, from the AXA perspective, maybe share with us your perspective on how insurers and institutional investors can bridge or help bridge this financing gap?
Sure thing. Can you hear me? Yes? Oh, good. We'll see if it lasts. So we've heard a lot of people talk today, but the building sector is facing mounting challenges in terms of resources. In 2023, only 4% of investments in the building sector were dedicated to green initiatives. At the same time, we see a drop in terms of investment in energy efficiency, and that's by 7%. Those are figures I had. I know, Lutz, you had a few. And actually going to what you said, Lutz earlier mentioned that there's a potential of unlocking, I think it was $2.7 trillion. So those are lots of opportunities. But then again, we saw Anne-Sophie and there's Sargil who mentioned, there are additional efforts to consider. We're talking about retrofitting and our energy efficiency projects. And all of those require additional efforts beyond just the financing aspect. And it's true that AXA, we can have both a role on the financing side, but also on the de-risking capacity side. So over the years, blended finance has been seen as a means of increasing capacity, as an enabler to provide additional capacity in this domain. I would say that as an insurer, the idea is alongside institutional investors, we play a major role. Why? Because we can provide long-term, stable capital, and this is essential for projects which are large-scale renovations ones. So we've talked a lot about it throughout the panels. I won't deep dive too much on it. But in any case, yeah, AXA has globally played that role, and we've dedicated a team, it's been for 5 years now, trying to enable it through different insurance means. Okay. Let's see, yeah. And so in the end, what is interesting with these projects that we're helping finance is that we're not generating them, we're not putting them together. In fact, these projects are being proposed by sponsors, NGOs, governments, and for us, that's great because it means they have a strategic focus to them. They want to pursue them, they need to pursue them, and we're just playing a catalytical role in the end. So that's kind of how I would see it in terms of blended finance. And we can increase, our role is in fact increasing capacity for loans by the private sector. So I think we've had a few people on these panels previously who can attest to that. And beyond that, I think what's interesting as well, and I think I'll stop to there because then I'm going to overflow.
No, thanks, Marika. So, at AXA, you use different instruments, no? Risk sharing, insurance instruments. Could you maybe elaborate a bit, how this actually works, such as performance guarantees, data-driven risk pricing, etc. How you use this to leverage these investments and crowd in additional capital?
Yes, of course. So guarantees are quite common in the construction and energy contracts. We can talk in particular about performance guarantees that you mentioned. There are going to be examples revolving around energy savings, resilience modifications, building. And if you go to one example, energy performance contracts, you're going to have an energy savings target associated with it. And so our role is to help reduce the uncertainty of achieving these targets. And when they're not met, well, that's where there are a few different dispositions that are put into place. Then other examples include warranties for underperforming technology outcomes. And I'd say that what is important as well is to try and explore the needs for new materials and technologies. And so that's another aspect beyond the traditional, let's say, mechanisms that we touched on earlier. I would say that we do have this de-risking capacity. There are a lot of construction players who are testing and adapting on the field in the design phase of their projects, and they're doing it individually. This makes it difficult in the end to actually shift and scale the transition. And as an insurer, we can support them. And this is actually what we do regularly because we have that capacity to, just like the Institute of Sustainable Finance does, to have a multi-stakeholder group of people who actually think about the topic and deep dive on the solutions. And so that one example I could give you, which actually produced an innovative insurance product, is around mass timber. So mass timber is quite common, for example, in Europe, but it isn't so much in the US. And so some of the construction players in the US have been facing issues getting that insurance coverage for this new material, new in parentheses, of course. And so AXA, through its branch AXA XL, have been supporting construction players to identify what are the risks linked to this new material, what are the mitigation measures they can put in place. And they actually also developed an insurance model so that they can meet this unmet need on the market. Yeah, that's a few examples for you.
Thank you. We have a shower coming over the tent, which sometimes can interfere also the acoustics here. Marika, you mentioned the Institute for Sustainable Finance, yeah, the French Institute, IFD. Could you elaborate a little bit more on the collaboration that you're having and maybe what makes this collaboration unique but also replicable maybe to other contexts?
Of course. So the Institute of Sustainable Finance, they were actually commissioned, so it was by the French Minister of the Economy and Finance to deep dive on the constraints, the challenges that we are facing in the building sector. So it was on the residential and tertiary sectors. They came out with 21 recommendations. I won't be detailing them with you today. But what is interesting is what I was mentioning earlier. It's regrouping different profiles from stakeholders across the value chain. And in the end, I always see an opportunity there to go further because, in fact, multi-stakeholder collaboration is the starting point. And actually, I'm thinking about Matt now. You know, there's this alliance I read about. I'm trying to remember. Yes, so there's an initiative that was launched by an alliance of leading green building organizations. I don't know what it's called, but they've been focusing on the 75% lower performing buildings that haven't adopted green business yet. And so they issued a report trying to focus on how can we, what is the protection gap that we see. And in fact, the higher performing buildings are where there is the finance. There are other resources. The issue is, well, you know, that's a minor stake of what is available on the market. So how do we push and scale it to the whole sector? And that's for example, one, I think, initiative that we could continue our work with IFD and just continue going forward on transitioning the building sector.
Many thanks, very good. Matt is nodding, so that's a good sign. Thank you so much, Marika. Now let's turn the conversation to developing and emerging economies and to the work that the Global Green Growth Institute is doing. Ferrucino, is that good?
Ferro.
Ferro, okay,
Ferro
thanks.
is a bit easier, yeah.
So GGGI's work in Asia is pioneering new tools and instruments to green the building sector, from live carbon assessments to cooling as a service. Could you share some of the approaches and how these approaches have helped mobilize finance to flow into the building sector in Asia?
Yeah. First of all, I saw my fan was very successful and got a lot of attention. You can pick up one in the Korean pavilion, yeah? Yes. And a second important message, I'm actually the regional director for Latin America and the Caribbean, yeah? And I do lead GGGI's sustainable finance area of work. So I'm somewhat familiar with our Asia program, but I'll speak from a global perspective, right? So the way that GGGI approaches this theme is at three levels. We try to work at the level of enabling conditions, working with the financial sectors to establish standards, taxonomies, disclosure and requirements. We work at the level of projects where we work directly with developers by providing technical and financial support. Gracias. Throughout the project design, structuring phase, and finally at the financial structuring level, where we work with the financial sector, we work with sovereigns, quasi-sovereign, private sector, acting essentially as a structuring agent. So developing sustainability financing frameworks, greens, sustainable, social and sustainability-linked instruments. The idea being that when we really look at what instruments drive the financial flows financing the climate agenda, we see the fixed income instruments are really the largest providers of that financing. What we're trying to do there is to embed these conditions and standards into the capital raising phase of financial institutions, of sovereigns, and quasi-sovereigns. So that is at the higher level, again, on the level of conditions, at the level of projects, at the level of financial instruments. We do have specific projects and programs that focus on the building sector. So specifically in Asia, we work with the International Climate Initiative, ICI, to implement called the Asia Low Carbon Building Transition. As you can see from our name, we are not great at picking acronyms. Yeah, already after GGGI, this project's acronym is ALCBT, yeah, the Asia Low Carbon Building Transition Program, which tries to introduce innovative business model like cooling as a service model.
Okay, thank you, Ferro. In the same initiative that you just mentioned, you also developed a tool to assess built-in carbon into buildings. Yeah, could you share with us how this has been integrated into this regional green finance network, and what challenges have you experienced in, let's say, establishing these kind of new assessment methodologies in the stakeholder landscape in the ASEAN region?
Yeah, keeping with the interesting acronyms, yeah, this project includes the rollout of an instrument called BEAT, the Building Emission Assessment Tool, which introduces a whole life cycle accounting framework with the goal of addressing one of the key issues that hinders the financing of resilient and efficient building, and this issue being the lack of data availability, yeah, and the lack of standardized data. So this instrument provides comparable metrics for domestic lenders to assess the environmental performance of buildings. It also provides carbon benchmarks to assist in credit evaluation processes, and finally supports the integration with environmental product declarations, yeah, to enhance transparency of these processes. In addition to this, in order to try to address the market fragmentation and the challenges associated with the high upfront costs involved with the development of these solutions, the project also includes the launch of a platform called Building Investment for Low Carbon Transition, which provides essentially a matchmaking platforms to support building owners and ESCOs and service providers to facilitate the identification, the engagement, and start moving towards the design and structuring of a common solution. The project also looks into specifically innovative financial mechanisms like the cooling as a service solution, and to discuss it further if it's of interest.
Thanks. Yeah, I mean, innovation is quite important, as we know, financial innovation, but also innovative business models. So with introducing new models like cooling as a service, what do you experience yourself the capacity of the ecosystem to innovate? Yeah, how do you drive this? How do you engage with other partners in order to come up with suitable financial instruments that meet these new service provider provisions?
For the cooling as a service, I think we looked at it initially from the point of view of ESCOs in a way, no? Of energy service companies. The business models are different, but they do suffer from many of the challenges and barriers, right? Being access to commercial finance being one, right? Being perceived as not necessarily credit worthy and be perceived as highly risky from commercial financial institutions. the need for liquidity for the energy service providers to conduct preliminary studies until they are able to sign an energy service agreement or a cooling service agreement, right? So the idea behind it is really to change cooling from being a capital expenditure for building owners having to invest in cooling technology. You can do it to me. To try to involve energy service providers that can be involved and be responsible for the design, the installation, the maintenance and operation of these services, and then sell cooling as a service, right? So moving from cooling in a source of capital expenditure for building owners to being an expense. And this creates an incentive for service providers to enhance the efficiency of the service, and on the other hand, it also helps us lower the barrier of high upfront cost and in a way perceived risk of this new type of business model.
Yeah, many thanks for sharing these insights. Also to the other panelists for sharing the insights. Very insightful, very different experiences, and interesting deep dives into some of the topics that you're tackling. Before opening, let's say, to the audience, I would have a final question to you, each of you. Maybe to share with us what is the next frontier that you're tackling. Yeah, what is the most important topic that you want to drive, let's say, in the next year in your institution in order to continue working on mobilizing finance for green buildings?
So I mentioned one earlier, but otherwise I would say that at AXA we're working on the topic of reclaimed materials. We started working internally this past year, or actually a year and a half, working with ERIP. So I saw ERIP earlier here, right? They're a sponsor. And we've been looking internally with our local teams to identify risks linked to using reclaimed materials in the construction sector. And of course, you know, there are some markets which are more mature than others, so there are already, you know, some initiatives launched, but this is a global effort. And so I would say that that would be kind of our focus going forward beyond the multi-stakeholder collaboration piece that I mentioned earlier.
From our side, I think AI and innovation is going to be key. So we are looking very much into that, you know, how can we use AI and innovation in our own processes that can support our clients, but also how can we, because AI is a topic that we all are starting from very early stages, right? So how can we bring that information to our clients as well? So we basically try to co-create solutions that can support from a sustainable finance perspective, green finance perspective, but also help them in their processes. So for us, AI and innovation is going to be a key topic in the coming time.
Let's see if it works. It does. For us, we're going to try to place greater effort in trying to involve commercial financial institutions into this space, working together to help them fully understand and align with new business models that are coming in, cooling as a service being one, and also help them, and it was really interesting what the other panelists were sharing, to price some of the risks that are involved in the sector, right? I think ultimately, more than seeing green, social, sustainability, blue, rainbow instruments, really what we want to see an impact on the pricing of financial instruments, right? That is going to be the one way that we can drive a true paradigm shift.
Thank you so much. So, yeah, I will open the floor to the audience if there are questions. There's one, two, all right.
And maybe my question is for the Green Growth Institute. So Justin Ozdova from Blue Like an Orange Sustainable Capital. We actually have one investment in energy efficient buildings in Mexico that serve low-income population with cool buildings and energy efficient buildings, but they still import their materials from Europe because there is no production of such materials in LATAM. And same as for solar energy, where there is a strong dependency with China, for example. I was thinking if you also work on the supply chain and really making sure that the materials needed for the construction or the upfitting of green buildings are also produced locally.
Yeah, my question was going to be quickly, hopefully all of you guys have heard of the Buildings Breakthrough, the process that started a couple of years ago at COP28. It's been going on, hopefully still going. You know, from your perspectives representing finance and investors, have you paid much attention to that? And do you have any hopes for some of those outcomes related to the Buildings Breakthrough?
To what extent on the insurance side and the property investment side are you rewarding developers who invest in resilient structures that go beyond standard building regulations? Sorry, Andrew Minson from the Global Cement and Concrete Association.
Yeah, thanks. So 3 questions from the audience. Renovation material, you know, local sourcing, buildings breakthrough, and sorry. Huh?
Rewarding through insurance and investment, enhanced resilience.
You want to take it first?
Sure. No, that's a great question. I think that's what's difficult. Does it work? Yeah, no, it's okay. It works. So I would say that we have risk engineers within our teams who are specialized in construction sector. So that would be the starting point to assess in what way you're mitigating risks that are anticipated according to the model and such. I'm not going to lie to you and say, oh, if you do this, then you'll get an incentive on your premiums and such. I think that's where it's difficult because in terms of these new materials, I was mentioning mass timber, for example, earlier. We don't have a proof record for everything, but the idea is potentially, depending on what you're looking at, we might have pilots or other things looking into that as well. And so depending on where you're at, I'm not sure which market you're based in, we would have teams who could support you more on answering that specific question. So I'm not going to say we're incentivizing every approach, and I'm sure you've heard this from a lot of insurers. That's what's difficult. It's putting a price on what you're doing. So if you have any, if you want any more insights, then I can loop you in with some risk engineers. Sorry?
Okay. Bilateral follow-up. I mean, there was one specific question, but maybe you want to answer on the buildings breakthrough or also the pricing in?
The pricing one, I don't have any. The building breakthrough is actually not something that we have paid a lot of attention to be fair, I'll be very transparent on that. So we haven't really seen that. I think what we have seen from the COP discussions that have been is about the more and more requirement coming towards the energy efficiency. So that's basically, tripling the energy efficiency. That's basically where the most focus has been from our side. Building breakthrough, no, not a lot of attention actually. So yeah.
On the Mexico question, we work with the government on the development of building codes and the upgrade of building codes, and that indirectly, I think it's really what you want to see, right? You want to update building codes so that you have a material and steady shift in the demand for example, material, and that creates certainty for the private sector to plan and invest, right? I think that's what you would want to see. We also do deliver technical assistance at the project level, ad hoc technical and financial support for specific interventions, but the effort is to work at a higher level of paradigm shift. And maybe to just address briefly the question on pricing, maybe not for insurance mechanisms, but at least at the level of credit providers and access to finance, we do see a number of multilateral development banks that are very active in the design and rollout of credit lines through national development banks for resilient buildings, right? Working both at the level of capital raising, where they provide guarantees to development banks to raise funding through green bonds, for instance, with a portion of the proceeds earmarked to resilient building, and that translates later on, in a lower cost of capital. Yeah, so not at the level of insurance, but certainly at the level of credit lines. So there is, for instance, now an initiative by the Inter-American Development Bank with the government of Ecuador for affordable and resilient housing, where you have the government of Ecuador benefiting from a guarantee from the Inter-American Development Bank to lower the governments of Ecuador cost of debt and then make that funding available to vulnerable groups and vulnerable population, right? And unfortunately not, an initiative that I'm not familiar with.
Well, thank you so much for these responses. We are over time, so I would like to close this by thanking the panelists of the second panel for their insights and contributions. And I want to say that this was a first session on finance here at the Buildings Pavilion at COP. There will be a second one on the 13th at 10 a.m. And there we will discuss the role of development banks in leveraging and mobilizing finance, and the role of carbon markets and carbon credits under Article 6 for the building sector. This has been put together by institutions that are organized both in the UNEP FI, but also in the Global ABC Finance Hub. So we will continue working on setting up these forums for exchange. So happy if you explore joining either of the two for continued discussions. Thank you so much, and yeah.